Welcome, Raising Kanan fans. We are back to cover episode 4 of season 4. Before we begin, just make sure you like and subscribe if you like the content. I'm covering every single Raising Kanan episode this season. Also, some sneak peek clips you'll see, and hopefully some more interviews with the cast. I put an interview I did with Grandma Joyce, aka Sharon Washington, last week. So make sure you check that out, particularly because we're starting off this episode with the fallout from Grandma Joyce revealing her cancer diagnosis to the entire family. I do have some mixed feelings about how they did this. Some of it was good, some of it was bad. The good part was that we got an immediate confrontation with Rock and her mother. We all know they had a contentious relationship, and even with this diagnosis, it's no different. Rock is very upset. She's never really learned how to process her emotions with her mother, but she still loves her mother deep down, as much as she doesn't want to admit it. And one thing that Rock does not like is being blindsided and also feeling helpless. And she definitely feels helpless in the situation because with cancer, there's nothing you can do at all. And she immediately goes in on Joyce talking about, you're making this about yourself. How could you hide this from the family? You try and make this grand dinner to reveal the news like we're some close family and this isn't going to change anything between us. And what I really liked about this scene is that it's very raw and Joyce reveals her greatest fear. And her greatest fear is knowing that when she's gone, she's not going to be mourned by any of her children. And there's not going to be any loving memories in the family of her. And that is like crushing to her as she's facing knowing that she's going to be dying from this illness, that there's no fixing it, there's no remission that's going to happen, there's no treatment. She's finally at the final stage where she has to face her death. And on Rock's end, what really made this scene poignant is the fact that Rock is basically looking at her future. All the things that she's throwing at her mother is basically the same thing she's been doing with Kanan, pushing her only child away, really ripping all of the love out of him to the point where when she goes, it's going to be the same thing. She's not going to be mourned at all by Kanan. And she's not, I think she's starting to see that when she's looking at her mother. And that's why she can't process it and why she says, I just have to leave. I can't do this with you right now, is what she says. I think that was probably the best acted scene of the episode. But what I didn't like is what came after that. So one of the things that Sharon Washington's character, Joyce Thomas, says is that everybody has their own version of what happened. Once, your father committed suicide and I was the only one left, everybody has their version of how their life went. I really thought after what we saw with Patina and how she played Rock, that the rest of the episode will be showing how Marvin deals with this, how Lou deals with this, how Kanan deals with the fallout. We didn't get none of that. We didn't get really anybody else's reaction to dealing with Grandma Joyce revealing that she's dying. They just really gave us Rock and that was it. So I thought that was a big misstep because I feel like this is probably the most important thing that's happened to this family since everything that happened with Lou. Lou with his drinking problems and all that. This is the most important moment in the family, and we don't get any reactions from anyone else. I thought that was a big misstep to have everybody go on as business as usual besides Rock. So I'm not sure why that happened, but it was a big misstep for this episode, probably the biggest one. But outside of that, the next thing we're going to go to is really Rock and Kanan, how they mirrored each other this episode. And when I say mirrored each other, really what they were striving for is trying to get their independence. In Kanan's case, he's trying to get his independence from his mother. In Rock's case, she wants her independence from pretty much Kwam, wanting to be the supplier, not the one that's waiting on the connect. She wants to be the connect, actually. So in Kanan's end, the way he's going about getting his independence is going behind his mother's back. That spark comes from Snaps and Pop. They're basically putting in his mind that, look, now that you've been hit, you look vulnerable. If you really want to, level up and get out of your mother's shadow, these are the things that you need to do. And it really shows why Snap and Pop have lasted so long because they see in Kanan that this is the next generation of dealers coming up. He's going to be the one that's out in the streets the way we can't be anymore because we're insulated. If we can get Kanan's complete loyalty, we have the next generation of hustlers under us. So they could have, blew up at him and alienated him by pressing him about the money that he owed, but they realized this is a bigger opportunity than just missing a daily drop. So I really commend how they've been going about this, and it really shows why they're probably the most dangerous characters on the show currently because they have that foresight of seeing what they have in Kanan and how they can potentially get him away from his mother. So something to keep an eye on. If Rock wants to get Kanan back into the fold with her, she's going to have to deal with snaps and pop some type of way. But it all didn't work out the way Kanan planned. And I like that they did that like this because it's realistic. On one hand, he has Snaps and Pop in his corner now. He was also able to get Kwan's ear for a little bit. I really think Kwan even entertained him just from the fact that Kanan said, I don't have no problem with the 20% price hike. So as soon as Kwan heard that, he's like, oh, I got somebody that, is going to be willing to do what I say and still get me my money on time. Unlike with Rock, Rock is always a struggle because he knows deep down that Rock wants his spot. That's why I think he's so hard on her because he's really trying to push her out to get her to quit because he knows that otherwise she's coming for his spot. So he has Kwan's ear a little bit, but I think Kwan really just wants to use Kanan to get Rock out of the picture. So Kanan needs to keep that in mind. He's not really looking at Kanan as a potential equal partner. He's just looking at Kanan as a means to an end. Outside of that, I did like the fact that Stefano wasn't going for it. And that goes in line with most mob guys, no matter what they do out in the streets and everything. Most of them are big on family. And somebody like Stefano was not going to appreciate Kanan going behind his mother's back, particularly because his mother brought him into the game. That's just nasty work. So I like that Stefano really just didn't give Kanan the time of day. So at least Rock will know that Stefano is still in her corner at least when it comes to her son. As we know with Marvin, totally different situation. So it was good to see that. Now on Rock's end, I thought Rock's storyline was a little bit unrealistic in the fact that how quickly she's able to get to the connect. I know that they beat up Draymond and was able to get a line on the connect, but the connect was a little too trusting of her in the beginning because I'm like, if you look at Rock's immediate track record, she's had her spots hit, she's had some of her dealers killed, she has her lawyer killed, so she's really hot right now. You would think that she's hot on the streets, so you would think any connect wouldn't really want to touch her at this point. So the fact that she was able to get in there so quickly, I thought that was a bit unrealistic, but you can't say Rock wasn't ready for the moment. You see with the fur and the whole outfit, she looked like a complete boss. She, had nerves of steel in that meeting. So maybe it was just something about that, real recognizes real, knowing that this woman is about her business and just being in her aura like that. Maybe the connect was like, you know what? I got to see what she's about. So we'll talk more in the future. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yes, but I'm like what I'm seeing so far. So I guess looking at it that way, maybe it's a little bit more realistic, but I think Rock has a little bit too much going on for any connect to really take her seriously. She's just too hot at the moment. So, but I like where things are going, where she's really trying to boss up. But with Unique doing all this interference in the background, I do see this connect situation blowing up in her face as well, like everything else has been going on for the beginning of season 4. But speaking of that, let's go over to Lou. Lou's situation is kind of interesting because, as you guys know, if you look at my channel, I do music journalism as well. So the 90s period is when I was a teenager, so it's good to see or fun to see that acted out in this phase where things are starting to really blow up with hip hop. We're talking early 90s. It's around 93 when this is starting. So we're getting into the G-Funk era and all that. New York is getting a big underground scene that's coming up. So Imani comes in from the record label and she's trying to explain to Lou, like, look, hip hop is on the cusp. It's going to be coming mainstream. It's going to become pop. And you're right at it with somebody like B-Rilla that's authentic, that people can really buy into. But Lou, I think he's correct to be skeptical about Imani because even though Imani's saying all the right things, she's very polite, very professional, somebody that you would want to have on your team, having your back. But Bottom line is she still works for the label. So her interest is going to be what benefits the label at all costs. So I think he's right to look at her as a potential spy to make sure that, she's there on the label's behalf to make sure that everything's being done according to plan and that he has to keep her at arm's length because his job is to keep B-Rilla focused on the music and being artistic. But the other thing is, I think it's obvious that he is drawn to her because she is professional. She's in the world that he wants to be in. So there's going to be some romance that's going to happen between them. But I do think it's going to blow up and lose face because I think Imani is just a little too slick for him. We think the streets are treacherous, but in the business world, white collar, particularly in the music business, nothing more cutthroat than that. So I think Lou is going to get outmaneuvered by Imani some type of way. I think at the very end, she's probably looking at him as a means to an end as well, and is going to end up. Hopefully, he doesn't end up losing B-Rilla, but I don't think the potential romance that ends up happening with Imani is going to be to his benefit if they go down that road. But I like what the character is showing right now. I think she's that bridge with the record label, and she's going to be the one that can help B-Rilla crossover, so to speak, depending on how he evolves his music. Speaking of B-Rilla, Party's been playing him pretty well so far. I do like the fact that he was able to jump into that 90s bag. We know 90s hip hop, particularly early 90s hip hop, has that very distinct call and response um, technique with the choruses, and he was able to nail that. So hopefully I might get a chance to interview him. If I do, I'll get a chance to talk to him about that. So I'll keep you guys posted. I should be hearing back in about a week or so. But yeah, with Lou's situation, I really hope they really delve into what his potential is on the music side, because also with B-Rilla, we got introduced to him while he was locked up. So we know he can very easily get pulled back into the streets. So what I'm wondering, is it going to be Rilla that pulls Lou back into some street mess, and then that's how Lou ends up getting sidetracked? Or is it Lou that ends up pulling B-Rilla into the family business because with everything going on with Rock, she's going to have all hands on deck eventually, and that's going to include Lou. And it would, in a sense, makes sense to include B-Rilla, who has street experience as well, and would need some of that, some of that credit can help him even more if word gets around town that, B-Rilla is still out in the streets living his raps. So we'll see where that goes. Now let's go to Unique. Unique has been a little bit reckless, but this is the most reckless he's gotten this episode, and it's almost cost him. I think this is the first real big mistake he made as far as hooking up with Damon and going to make that hit on Terry's warehouse. Number one, grand opening, grand closing for Damon. I thought maybe he was going to stick around a little bit as a recruit with Unique, but he gets killed immediately on the ambush that they did at the warehouse. Unique barely escapes with his life. Luckily, no one sees his face, but he has tipped his hand a little bit because now they know there's someone else still out there gunning for them. And they know that somebody like Damon couldn't have been the one to mastermind all this. So this puts Unique in a little bit more danger, being that his face isn't out there, but they're looking for someone. So that's the first big mistake I think that Unique has made. However, I think the things that he's done well is going to serve him for the remainder of the season. The number one thing that stood out to me is the fact that Marvin is getting close to Early, not even realizing that Unique is in the picture. So now he has Early hooked up with Stefano. So then that gives Unique a direct line of information, not only into Stefano's business, but also into Marvin's business, because we know Early is going to be giving all that information to Unique until Unique decides that he's expendable, which I think is going to happen at some point. Because I think as Unique gets more and more reckless, Early is going to slip up, maybe tell Marvin about Unique, and then that's going to be the end of Early. And as far as what's going on right now, I've mentioned that the last two reviews I've done, that I think Marvin is finally going to get killed this season. And I think Unique is a top candidate to do it. As close as he's getting with Stefano and everyone, it's going to make it very easy for Unique to pull off an ambush. The other trump card that Unique has is hooking up with the Boselli family. Now, some of you might not remember a couple seasons ago, remember he helped out Sal, who was killed by Marvin in that ambush where Marvin dressed up as the I think what was he the postal service person outside of the church and killed Sal as he was coming out. But you might not remember that Sal's son Marco had been saved previously by Unique. So that's why Unique has this relationship with the Baselli family where he was able to just sit up there with Teresa and get all the information he needs. So the Baselli family is a rival family to Stefano's family. So this is another power source that Unique could possibly have to pull off an ambush that might not only take out Marvin, but could also potentially take out Stefano as well, which in turn hurts Rock even more because even with all the stuff Stefano's doing behind Rock's back with Marvin, Stefano is still a important ally for Rock. So if Unique takes Stefano's crew out of the picture, then Rock is severely isolated at that point. So something to keep in mind. So even though Unique has made a mistake, as far as attacking that warehouse so quickly, he has a lot of bullets in the chamber, and it's really just a matter of executing them over the next couple episodes, which I think he will do. I think Joey Badass is playing them really well so far. I do miss the cool and collected Unique that we got previous seasons, but this more reckless Unique makes him more of a wild card. It makes him a little bit more dangerous because he still has that strategic edge, but he has a little bit more Ronnie in him with that murder streak. So that combination almost makes him like a Two-Face type of character for those who know your Batman comics history. So that makes him even more dangerous because he's so unpredictable. So I think Joey Badass is doing a good job as far as how he's betraying that duality with the character so far. But I do think, I mentioned this before, we didn't get anything about it this episode, but if we're going to look at a big weakness for Unique, it'll be two things: his impulsiveness, where he goes into too much of that rage and makes impulsive decisions, like hitting that warehouse, the guarded warehouse with just him and Damon. And the other weakness will be his child's mother, who he goes and visits. So if Rock ever puts that together, that'll be her way to ambush Unique. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Um, as far as other things to focus on, the big thing will be Jukebox having her first body. And the reason why it happens is because of Marvin's sloppiness. Juke had warned him, don't go in there with a gun, be careful about what you do. And he nearly ends up getting himself killed, and Juke has to save him. So I hope this isn't something that they gloss over because this is a big kill. Not only the fact that it's her first murder, but it's murder of someone that's close to uh, someone who's being a mentor for her when she was going to, she's just new at the queer clubs and everything. This woman brought her into the clubs, was mentoring her to a degree. And even though her husband was abusive, I'm pretty sure she didn't want the man killed. So she's going to be sitting there with her, trying to comfort her, dealing with this guilt inside, knowing that she's responsible for that man getting killed, even though he was a scumbag and probably deserved it. That's a lot to be weighing on Jukebox when she's only, what, 17, 18 years old. So what's going to be the fallout? This is something that's going to be very important. I want to see how the Raising Kanan writers handle this because they can't really gloss over this. This is going to be very emotional, or should be very emotional for Jukebox. It should be a lot of conflicted feelings. I think she's going to have a little bit of resentment for Marvin because if he had, her father had handled this appropriately, she wouldn't have been put in that position. Also, was there anyone else out there that saw Marvin go in or saw, her and her father running out to the car afterward? Did her mentor, her queer mentor, see potentially this happening? Can't rule that out. She might have seen that, she coming in at the wrong time, seeing Juke and her father running out. She can put two and two together. Because we still have to figure out how is this pipeline that gets Juke into law enforcement. Now, I'm still not seeing it at this point, but especially now that she's called a body. So I really want to see how they play this, and they cannot gloss over it the same way that they've done so far with Grandma Joyce and her cancer diagnosis with her children. So we'll see where Jukebox goes with this and how she carries it over the next couple episodes. What I don't want to see is her just become immediately turn into like the Jukebox that we know from the original Power. She shouldn't, hit a light switch and become an immediate cold and calculating killer. That's not how her character has been. She's been really a strong character on the exterior, but emotionally inside, she's still very vulnerable as a teenager, which is what she is. So I really hope that they focus on that the next couple episodes. They did a good job last season dealing with Lou's turmoil, they should be able to do the same thing with Jukebox. So we'll see where that goes. So now I wanted to close on kind of the biggest thing that's concerning me right now, and that will be where is Famous? Now, my last review, I speculated my concern about wondering if Famous was actually dead. Last week I said that he's probably not, because I felt that if he was dead, his mother would have already confronted Kanan by now, asking where he is, being worried, or at the very least his sister as well. But now I'm not so sure. Now I'm concerned again. Before I thought maybe Lou had something to do with Famous's disappearance because he seems so angry and uptight anytime Famous was brought up by any other character. But now we find out in this episode that Kanan and Lou really have no idea where Famous is. Their main concern is that is he snitching? Is he working with the police? They don't know, but they're concerned and they're angry that he's kind of abandoned them like this, and they're having to consider that he would even do something like that. So that to me rules out Kanan and Lou. They have no idea what's going on with Famous. Now, the fact that in that conversation, Kanan says that maybe it wasn't Kanan, maybe it was Lou, but they said that Famous's sister hasn't seen or heard from him, and she's afraid about where is he, concerned about his well-being. So that by extension will also probably include Famous's mother. So we can rule out the fact that Famous is cooperating with the police because if he was, they would know that he's safe and sound, meaning his sister and his mother. So if they don't know where he's at, that probably rules out him working with the police. So that makes us have to consider again, he might possibly be dead. But if he is dead, who would have killed him? That's the thing. Unique, possibly, because going back to season one, Buck 20, the first kill that Kanan did that Famous was present for, and is the reason behind the whole Streets Need a Body song, he was affiliated with Unique. So if Unique had any type of knowledge that Famous was involved or he was there, I could see Unique possibly killing Famous. But that's not really a pick that I'm sold on because I don't see how he would be able to get that information or really at this point even being concerned with someone like Famous. He's concerned with Rock and the people that are really doing work out in the streets for Rock. That's why he targeted the lawyer. That's why he's targeting the warehouses and everything. None of that really has anything to do with Famous. So I would be kind of surprised if it was someone like Unique that did it. B-Rilla doesn't fit because B-Rilla was, even though he took some interest in Famous's songs, he was locked up or he's been locked up for, the time that Famous has disappeared. So I'd rule him out as well. Kanan and Lou, we've already ruled them out. Um, Marvin would have no reason to harm Famous, so get him out the picture. So that leaves one person that I think is the most likely suspect, and that would be Rock. Now, what reason would Rock have to harm Famous? Remember, before the lawyer died, the lawyer was her inside track on everything that was happening inside the precinct. That was her mole. So her lawyer would more than likely tell her that Famous had been picked up by the police and they're trying to get him to flip. And she already knows that Famous was present for that Buck 20 murder. And if he was the snitch, that would get Kanan locked up for life. And we know that when Rock is not thinking straight, when she thinks that there's an informant in her midst, she panics like she did with Scrap. She still killed Scrap thinking he was an informant and he wasn't. So if she gets any inkling that someone can get Kanan locked up, what do you think she's going to do? So I think that she made a judgment call to be rather safe than sorry, and she's the one that killed Famous if he is dead. And if she's the one that did it, it makes perfect narrative sense because she would be the one to do that type of act, and that would be the symbolic final break between Kanan and Rock's relationship. There's no going back after that. You've killed Kanan's best friend. So that's my theory. If if Famous is dead, I think it has to be Rock. No one else really makes sense. Particularly if it's not Rock, it'd have to be some other character that's just getting introduced and it wouldn't have the same impact. But even with that said, I'm hoping beyond hope that Famous is not dead because we all love Famous. Famous is our knucklehead. He's perfect comic relief. He's one of the only normal characters on the show to a degree. So I hope he's not dead. But the fact that Kanan and Lou are stating his family doesn't know where he's at, that's a very big warning sign. And that last weekend we didn't have that knowledge of knowing that his family didn't know where he's at. I guess the other option could be he's basically hold up on his own somewhere. But Famous doesn't really know how to take care of himself that well. So I can't see him being able to hold down an apartment or some other place in hiding without anyone else knowing about it. So that's the other thing. Maybe he's out in Jersey, but I would severely doubt that. One other thing that just came to mind, one other potential theory, remember that he did kill that guy, Freddie. So maybe Freddie's people in that botched robbery got word that it was Famous, and maybe they're the ones that are after him, and that's why he's in hiding, or maybe they're the ones that have done something to him. But again, that would be kind of anticlimactic because we haven't really met any of Freddy's people, even in the fallout after Freddy was killed. So I wouldn't like that development either. But I'm gonna conclude it there. Let me know what you guys think. Overall, I did like the episode. I did not like the fact that they kind of just brushed aside Joyce's cancer diagnosis with the rest of the children and kind of ignored it for the rest of the episode. But the rest of the episode was at the very least entertaining, and that's what we want to see from any Power episode. It's just our Power Universe episode is just make sure you entertain me. And we got the warehouse shootout. We got Unique out here recruiting and still putting in work. Have the development of him working with the Baselli family, which can possibly endanger Stefano and Marvin. So a lot of developments. I'm still sticking with my theory that Marvin doesn't make it through the end of the season, and maybe not Unique either. And we'll see where that goes. I still have no idea who Breeze is. I'm not even going to touch that theory because I don't think it's Unique, and I don't think they've really thought that far in the future. I don't even think we've been introduced to whoever Breeze is going to be yet. So we'll see where that goes by season's end. But let me know what you guys think. Are you enjoying this season of Raising Kanan so far? What's your favorite character? What's your favorite storyline? And what are your predictions for the remainder of season 4? And so I will see you guys next week to cover episode 5. I'm hoping to get an interview with Party, aka B-Rilla. So if that comes to fruition, I'll let you know. Just make sure you like and subscribe and keep your notifications turned on. And I'll keep you guys updated with some more sneak peek footage of episode 5 before it airs next week, hopefully. So take care and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see you guys next week.